Okay, we're live.
Okay, it's Wednesday, May 18th, 2023. This is Thursday. My days are off. I messed up already. Thursday, May 18th, 2023. This is a curriculum and learning meeting. And the meeting is called to order at 4 p.m. Amy, has the meeting been properly posted?
Yes.
Okay, and then we're going to move to introduction of curriculum and learning. Just quickly, welcome Sarah Wren, new to the board, to curricular learning, or board member Christensen, welcome. And then we'll get started. The first item on the list on the agenda is action items. AP Chemistry textbook adoption. Amanda Gilman will present the proposed textbook update for AP Chemistry textbook requested for implementation in the 2023-2024 school year.
Amanda's here and ready to talk about a proposed new chemistry textbook. I believe this is the updated version of the textbook we have been using. So this is just updating materials that are needed.
So the book that I currently use, actually at the end of the table, it's some edition prior to the 10th and the 11th. We purchased that in 2013 when we made the change from CAP chemistry through UW-Oshkosh to AP chemistry. And the College Board on their course exam description for, I think all courses, but I know definitely for chemistry, says that materials in use will be no older than 10 years. So that book is 10 years officially this year. I would like to stay with the same author. It's actually the same author that I use in honors chemistry as well, so there's some similarity of language. And while it is a very thick book that I'm asking, in my opinion, when we go with a thinner textbook, or when I've had students look at a thinner textbook, their first response is there's not as many practice problems. So, and also from an assigning standpoint, there's less for me to assign. So for students who are looking for more drill and skill, which can be important with chemistry, the thickness is important. Plus, the book you have in front of you, the thicker, newer book, is the 10th. The publisher just in the last 3 weeks has and I communicated with them in February, which is why I don't have it, has the 11th. So I would like the newest available because they'll support it the longest. Besides the age of the textbook, the reason to make the change from the one I'm currently using is that when that book was published, the College Board organized AP Chemistry around what they called 6 big ideas, and somewhere between then and now, they've gone to 4 big ideas. So any references within the book, because it is an AP edition, don't correspond to current language used by the College Board. So when the students use their AP classroom resources that all AP students have access to for being in the class, they don't mesh. And I can help them see how it meshes. It would just, I think, obvious that it'd be nicer if they just kind of played nicely together until the College Board, of course, decides to change again. But that's the reason that I want a new book.
And so you've gotten a quote, which I have here.
Yes, and the quote you can see is for the 11th, even though it was not physically available for them to send me a sample copy of at the time.
Sure, okay.
So we're currently using the 9th right now,
Yes,
and then you're showing us the 10th, but actually requesting the 11th edition. That's, okay, and then, so you're not actually even using the 10th at all?
no,
It's
they
just-
sent me that and
Okay.
whenever I got this quote in February, as just a, do you wanna look at it?
How long have you used the 9th edition?
In 2013, so 10 years. So if we're gonna follow the College Board's language, it is
Yeah.
ready to be phased out.
And this is for 25 plus a PEP, or those numbers are,
Yes, so if I understood it correctly, should I just let you explain?
So obviously with a quote, they needed a number. 25 is a fairly standard kind of maximum that we would need for AP chemistry. It tends to only be one section because you need to take a whole year of chemistry even prior to AP chemistry, so it's not something that a large percentage of students go into, both in terms of interest and just how it fits into a schedule. So 25 seemed like the safe, then I won't need to ask for more books in a couple of years.
Right.
Sure.
Also,
In case the
I'll admit that,
classrooms change.
right, and if I have 25 and I have fewer than that, then I can say to the students, take this very heavy book, take it home, use it there. When you need a book in the classroom, you'll have to share, but we have classroom copies,
Okay.
and then
Yeah.
the books last longer. You see the ninth copy that I brought you doesn't look like it's been that beat up,
Right, yeah.
because I've been able to say each year, please don't lug these around for your, back in
Yeah.
the book.
On
But-
average, I'm
and-
sorry,
Go ahead.
on average, how many students do you have in a class?
The highest has been like 15, lowest about 7 or 8. That'd be a whole separate discussion of course and sequence, but
Down the road.
So then what you would usually do is have them in the class, and then if there is ample books, you'd also allow the students to have it at home.
so the books that are in the classroom are not checked out to any one student. So I keep records of any book I check out. I can tell you Joe Smith has this book so that I know what I'm recollecting at the end of the year and I can fill out whatever book find list. The ones in the classroom are also numbered so I can keep track of them, but they're not assigned. And when we, for example, go over homework, I say to the students, it would probably be helpful if you had the book open in front of you and they'll go and, for example, if I was sitting next to Laura in class, she and I would just share a copy.
And
I'm
then we
sorry,
have
did- No, you're fine.
hard copy options only.
Oh, that's what I was gonna ask, if there was a digital
Well,
version that goes with it, like
there,
the company.
well, and that's another reason that I think that an
Yeah.
update makes sense, is that any digital resources that came with the ninth are phased out. I will tell you that students highly prefer in chemistry to have a physical book.
Yeah.
For example, in honors chemistry, I have digital codes that I can give them that give them access to an electronic textbook. And at the beginning of the year, I tell them this, I say, I'm gonna check out a physical textbook to you. If you would prefer the digital or you would like the digital in addition, I can give you a code, but I don't wanna hand out codes to everyone and have 95% of them not be used. And I think this year I handed out 6 codes. So for all the students' love of technology, when it comes to a chem problem, they like a book in front of them.
Yeah, something tangible. Any other questions or discussion?
When did he expire? That's why.
So I have a summer assignment, AP chemistry, as I was mentioning prior to, or maybe the beginning of the meeting, it's a second year course. So there's a summer assignment to keep students' brains back in the chemistry game. So my plan is to hand out for the students I'll be meeting with next week, who are officially starting in fall. They'll be enrolled through a fall summer academy course doing summer assignments. They're gonna do them out of the 9th book, because obviously even if you approve it in the next minute, we're not going to have the 11th, and then I'll just, exchange 9th for 11th in the fall.
Oh, okay. I'm good to go.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I don't have any other questions either.
Okay, I need a motion to move to, are there any? Okay, alright. I need a motion to approve the adoption of the proposed AP chemistry textbook.
I'll move.
Motion by Sarah, I'll break the tie.
Okay.
The motion,
Sarah,
Sarah, I'll second that.
you need a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I'm assuming I can take the books with me, no one wanted them to like.
Weightlifting maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like locking a door.
Oh, and I will admit that I
I love it.
I have asked for a second instructor copy, which they send those for free, so that I can have one at home and not be taking it back and forth too, so.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because the instructor copy actually has
It's probably-
additional pages.
Yeah, I would think so, for sure. Well, thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
presenting that. That was
Thank you.
interesting.
Mhm.
Be great learning for the kids. All those AP Chem students.
And with the number of students in the class, I think it does make it easier to have a copy for them at their house, cause that's a
Oh,
big
yeah.
book, and they're gonna be spending a lot of time with that material.
And if the, you know, enrollment increases, we can talk to students about what do you wanna keep at school, the digital or, you know, the paper, but
Yeah,
right now.
but that should work well.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
so much.
All right, moving on to the next action item. Let's see, AP pre-calculus textbook adoption, right? Brenda Larson will present the proposed textbook adoption for the AP pre-calculus course for the 2023-2024 school year. Did I get that all? So with Brenda? Okay, hi Brenda.
Hi there, how are you guys?
Good, how are you?
Good. Okay, so I also brought, the copy of the hardcover book as well. We're kind of in the same boat that Amanda's in terms of having the most current version right now. I think that was relayed as well, but this is version 10 of the book. Version 11 is coming out any day now. The rep keeps telling us, any day now we should be getting a copy of it. I think by next week we should have the electronic version, and then by June, the print version will be available. Our need for the book is this is a brand new course, so it's pre-calculus, which we've had pre-calculus for 30, 40, 50 years, but now it's gonna be AP pre-calculus, so the students will have that opportunity to take an AP exam and get college credit for the course. So when we aligned up what we currently do in pre-calculus to what's now expected in the AP version, I would say we cover probably about 80% of what the rigor is gonna be for the AP. So we knew that at that time, we're gonna need to have a decent resource to go with the course. So that is why our ask for the book. We are though looking more for the digital copy of it. We found we have our algebra, geometry, and algebra 2 courses also have a digital book, and the students have been comfortable with it and have been using the digital version for those books, so we figured it would just be the same for pre-calculus to keep it with an e-textbook instead. It does come with My Math Lab. I did put in the quote though to have like 5 hard copy books, so if kids don't have their Chromebook in class, or a lot of times too in class, we will do smartboard files, we'll do presenting of the notes, and they're not necessarily always referring to their book. But when they go to do homework, we also have a software program that comes with the e-textbook called My Math Lab.
And then if you keep scrolling, My Math Lab comes up below that.
And so this is hot off the press, so
Yeah,
after
so I'm okay.
after the meeting, we will
Sure.
add it to the
Okay,
this meeting in Board Docs.
okay.
So what's the total of the ask?
There you go.
15
Total?
We have 110 students signed up next year for AP pre-calculus. And then, like I said, this is the e-textbook cost for 6 years.
6-year access,
So yeah,
okay.
it's a 6-year cycle. And then they also do get the My Lab or My Math Lab with it as well. And that does include AP practice problems, again, which are all gonna be new to us as well, because we haven't taught this through the College Board.
Okay.
I didn't catch how many textbooks, how many books?
I think, did you say 6?
I put 5 hardcover student editions, and then there's 2,
5 hardcovers.
yeah, just,
As like loaners, if they wanted to take it home
that's
or
what I
keep
figured,
it?
yeah,
Okay.
if they wanna, if in class, if they just would rather have a hard copy book from home, but I think most kids in our classes are comfortable with, they've been using it for the other math
So these are the EP version
of this.
So we.
Yeah, so this is the 10, and then the 11th is the AP version. And then this is like a 1-pager I brought along too. This outlines like what the new edition is gonna add to the current book, to make it align with the AP.
Any other questions?
Yes, okay. they, essentially just 80% is covered now when they need to get to that
It's a new
key.
course, I remember when we
Yeah,
presented the
that-
first
sure.
time in regards to the NP, so
Of course, it'll
this
be
is
nice
now
for the
just-
students to be able to have that credit.
That's why it was recommended, so we just need to firm it up with that reading the books along with it.
Any other questions or
I'm good.
comments? Alrighty. Gotta get my spectacles on. I need a motion to approve the adoption of the proposed AP pre-calculus textbook.
So moved.
A motion by Board Member Christensen. Do I have a second? Okay, a second by Board Member Wren. And all in favor?
Aye.
Alright, so very good. It's approved.
All right.
Thank you.
Right, yeah, thank you very much
Thank you.
for the information.
Thank you. Oh, you need it.
Like I could, I got a teacher
put it under my
tomorrow.
pillow, it's so exciting. Alrighty, moving right along, we have discussion items. Global Scholar Program update by Jessica Botkoff. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, so you'll provide a presentation on it.
Yes.
Very good.
Great, so yes, this was just taken at our culture fair, which was just held at the end of April. And those are some of our Global Scholar kids. The Global Scholar program actually is something that is done by DPI. And then we have to sign or fill out an application to be a part of it, and we did that 2010. So we've been in the program for quite a while, and this is just some of our numbers. There are 4 main components to it. There's coursework that they have to do. There's also literacy, there are cultural activities, and they have to do some service work as well. They have to do 20 hours over the course of 4 years. So you can kind of just see our enrollment over the last few years. I just pulled the most recent. We had a huge group of kids go through, was that 2019? We just had a big class that year too, and so 20 kids graduated with the distinction of Global Scholar. And then you can kind of see it taper off a little bit. We had some kids that had problems finishing it during COVID because they were the expectation is kids go out to the community and do things, but obviously they could not. So we're kind of on the uptrend too now, so it's kind of a continuous enrollment thing, so there's nothing like freshman year they have to enroll. I've had sophomores and juniors apply for it, and they just happen to have the right classes and they've done the right activities to be approved for it too.
So you can enroll at any point.
Senior is probably a little bit late, but yeah, you can enroll anytime. And then this one, so these are some of our highlights, and again, there's some culture fair pictures. We've had, they help staff the culture fair, and honestly, without our student volunteers, we couldn't make it happen. It's just, there's so many hands that are needed, so they do get their service hours that way. They do promote, they usually go to North and sometimes BF, and they promote to the younger kids there about global education. The Model UN, which is where I just came from, that program was created because students thought it would be a nice thing to add to the cultural activities. So that's been going on for a few years, and some of our State Department speakers have encouraged the Model UN program too. We just got done speaking with the Deputy Secretary General of NATO, so she was awesome. She was really interesting to listen to.
Cool.
And the kids, I said, kids, we have to stop. She needs to go at 4. So she was great. And then we also have the Costa Rica-Africa partnership, which is an exchange program. So we have not sent any kids down to Costa Rica yet, but we have a lot of Costa Ricans that come up and visit us, usually in January because they want to experience snow. We had them only for 1 day this year, but the director of Costa Rica-Africa is hoping we can extend it to like a few more weeks, overnight stays this
Do they
year.
go to other schools then or something?
They were stationed with Grafton, and they just didn't have enough kids. I think it was too close to like COVID. They just didn't have enough enrollment to send a big group to us. So, but they're hoping in 2024 we can have a big group stay with our students in Menomonee Falls, and they still stay in contact even though they got that 1 day in January. They're social media. They're staying in contact all the time.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's really cool.
What's inhibited us to send students?
This is a new program to me, so this was brought on board by a former staff member told us about it, and then it's kind of been taken on by myself, and then COVID happened, and so we just haven't gotten the momentum. So it's something we do want to look into, because Costa Rica seems to be a popular, I don't know, kids are really curious about that area of the world, so.
Can you explain Panama?
Yeah, we also do have a Panama program. So that has been going every year, it will be going this summer as well. So a lot of kids sign up for that, and so we haven't had kids, it's too hard to get 2 trips to go in 1 year. So we didn't wanna divide and conquer, but eventually it might turn into something where we do visit Costa Rica.
So it'd be similar to like a Panama program then, okay, that'd be a good experience.
So looking forward, Jeff and I have worked on changing some of the courses. We realized that our 9th grade English class wasn't quite in alignment with global. It used to be called Global Perspectives when we started Global Scholars Program, but the curriculum has changed, and so we've kind of had to remove the English 9 class as part of their course requirements. So then we're hoping to add a few other classes onto the list that would satisfy those Global Scholar requirements. So I'm waiting to hear back from her. I just emailed her again this morning. And then Bright Spots, Phoenix Time. I can't say enough good things about it. It's fantastic for me to meet with students, and also we usually can schedule guest speakers. The one we had today, she's on the West Coast, so it didn't quite work for her to come during Phoenix Time, but we have movie discussions, guest speakers, and it's been really great for Global Scholars.
Who have you had?
We've had someone from the State Department, and he's from Wisconsin, which was kind of nice, so like we would talk about like cities, and he knew where Menominee Falls was, so it was kind of cool. And he also encouraged kids to sign up for an internship program through the State Department, so some kids want to do that, so I sent the email along to those students. We've had AFS, we've had the Peace Corps, I've had UWM and their international office come and present as well, and honestly, like, now that we can do it virtually, or it's like easier to do it virtually, like guest speakers are more of a possibility than they were probably pre-COVID, so that's been one benefit to that, so. And those will count towards their cultural activity components as well, listening to guest speakers.
Also an English teacher from, she's in Jordan,
Yes,
and just other contexts we've had
yes,
around the world.
any contacts we've had around the world, we try and get them to come and speak to
Former
us.
students who've graduated who are studying abroad.
Yeah, it's
great.
very nice. And then future projects, we've been working with our ELL teachers. We would like to do some conversation circles, so the ELL teachers understand that there's a need for their students to kind of practice English. And some of my kids would like to help those students learn English, so we thought that could be a great thing. During COVID, we did have more of a pen pal situation, so my students would write letters to students learning English. So we're always looking for other opportunities to expand, and we also thought maybe working with some of the younger kids in the district too could be a possibility. And then, we talked about that, the GSP students teaching younger kids, So we're always looking for new opportunities, and my students always need service hours, so that's one of the things that they expressed an interest in, was working with younger kids.
I like it, that's a great idea.
So we've had just from it looks like about 5 students. What's been the hindrance of having kids participate? It seems like such a great program.
It is a great program. It's typically the service hours they shy away from that. Sometimes the course requirements, they can't quite fit it in, so just with their other classes that they're taking. So those are probably the 2 biggest things.
And oftentimes.
How many
What are the
service
course
hours?
requirements?
I'm sorry.
I'm kind of curious.
So they have to take their foreign language all 4 years, so
All 4 years.
they have to stay in their same language all 4 years. And then they have to have 8 semesters of other globally themed classes, so world history would count, AP Hug, AP Econ. So, and I think sometimes those things, they shy away from that too if it's an AP course. We do offer things like sociology, it's not an AP course, but they can take sociology. There's a course I teach called Exploring World Cultures, that's become pretty popular.
International foods.
International foods, yes.
Should be very popular.
Yeah.
Very
I
popular.
don't know
What
what
time does that class run?
So I think what we're seeing, to answer your question, we are competing with other programs and other,
Yeah.
academies, and so it's a lot of times kids who would like to, but just can't fit it in.
There's a lot going on.
There is,
A lot of
yes.
choices, which is
Seems really
amazing.
great though.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's almost built right in if they're taking the right courses,
taking
they
the right
would just
courses,
say,
yes.
go right into it. Was there any, I don't know what's the right word for it, like kind of fading away from the program, like starting and then didn't finish?
Occasionally,
Yeah.
just like usually like by the beginning, if I see it, it's usually the beginning of their senior year and they just realize they can't
Get
fit in all those courses.
Yes.
So, and they want to study hall, but they, so they don't want to overbook themselves, which I can appreciate, but so it's,
True.
senior year.
Okay, any other
Thank
questions?
you so much.
It's
Yeah,
like,
thank
how
you.
many service hours did you say?
20 hours over the
20.
course of 4
20
years.
over the course, okay,
Oh,
well, it's not too bad.
Especially if
And
you
that'll
go
be
to-
really helpful working with, if the, getting into the younger ages, starting to recruit earlier, getting that 4 years of
Right.
language earlier.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
promote in that way.
well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for
Thank you.
presenting, that's very interesting.
Alright, thank you very much.
Right, moving right along. I know we wanna stay on time,
You're doing
right?
well so far.
Oh, thank you, thank you. I know my hands are a little sweaty right now.
We're on schedule.
Okay, good.
I won't say
Too fast, yeah, I know.
Yeah, but,
I gotta move on, I thought we were being so far away from you guys.
Yes.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is an action item. We have middle school math, 8th grade math course that is
Yeah.
presented by Terry Kobars and Laura. And Luera, sorry.
That's okay.
Will present, yep.
Kelly Marchese is also here as
Okay.
a support aide.
Okay,
She's
okay,
the
very
coach.
good. And it's for the 2023-2024 school year.
Yes.
Very
So yes, this is something we have been internally talking about since early in the year. And also I know we've had chances to talk with individual board members over time and it seems like, feedback has been positive. This is something that has been identified as a need for a while. And so we've tried to take a really thoughtful approach and offering some perhaps different opportunities to allow families to have some choice in how the math pathway plays out. So Mrs. Covers will share that and I perhaps will pipe in from time to time. But this has been ongoing work that I've found to be really interesting and I think we've really tried hard to do our due diligence around this.
So anytime I'm looking at a change, I always think it's important to start with the why we're looking at a change. So this really, I know I talked to you guys about our schedule change and how things kind of came unearthed really early on. This was a similar situation that unearthed really early on, I would say. I think every math teacher that I had a one-on-one meeting with at the start of the year said our algebra course for all of our 8th graders is a pain point. Additionally, that guy down at the end of the row over here said, I'm not sure what's happening in 8th grade and math is the right thing and it might be something that we need to look at, as well as our coaches in our building said, this just doesn't seem like things are right and it might be something that we need to look at. So that's really how it became on my radar, was that piece of feedback. Some of the concerns that kind of came up when we started looking into it is our pacing concerns really came to the top. So last year was the first year that we had implemented EdGen's algebra course for all of our 8th graders. Previous to that, we had a different curriculum that was algebra in 8th grade. In title, probably alone, the rigor of the course did not accurately match up to what an algebra course would be. So that adopting that 8th grade EdGen's algebra course really made us align with what algebra expectations were. One of the things that played out last year was we had a course that was co-taught. The pacing needed to be different for our students to be able to keep up with the learning in there and have the supports that they need to be successful. And we actually had students that needed to continue the course into the summer because we weren't able to get through all of the content and all of the standards necessary to complete an algebra course. And the expectation is students had algebra completed to be able to move into geometry in 9th grade. So that's obviously a big concern. We can't be asking our families and students to continue their learning in the summertime because the course isn't paced appropriately for them. Additionally, feedback from the teachers are when we adopted the EdGEMS algebra course, to keep up with the pace that's required to move through the standards at the pace that a typical 9th grade algebra class would run. We aren't able to go into the depth of our standards of the understanding the why as opposed to just learning the procedures of the things. So we're moving at a pace that's fast enough that we're not getting to that deeper understanding with our students to ensure that we're getting to the end of it by the end of 8th grade year, so we're not doing that summer learning. So essentially what we're finding is it's not appropriate for all of our students in the pacing and the, I think the next piece is those 8th grade standards, and that's something I know Barb really wanted to talk to. There is an amazing documenting here that is too much and too in-depth for us to dig into. One of the reasons I really wanted to link this in here is, number one, like there's been a lot of thought and research put into this, but number two, this is like our math department and in particular Ms. Luera's professionalism on display. Like this is an outstanding example of the thought and level of depth that she dove into as to why this gap is happening for our kids and what it's actually meaning for our students in that lack of accessing those 8th grade standards. I'll let you talk to a little bit about it, but I have to brag about you first.
Well, thank you. No, ultimately what we need to recognize is that our current pacing goes from 6th grade skills to 7th grade to skipping algebra. So I'm sure you guys are questioning, how are we learning 2 years of math in 1 year? And we're not. There are some 8th grade skills that overlap with algebra, but those skills are also set there in a way to give students the opportunity to review skills that they did before so that they can understand the skill more deeply and then progress on to algebra skills. And we're just finding that in order to hit the algebra pieces, what that document shows is that there are a ton of 8th grade skills that are being missed. We also have to adjust our pacing in algebra and skip a lot of algebra skills because they're first learning these 8th grade skills this year and then going deeper into our algebra skills. So we have to also cut some algebra skills that are needed for geometry, algebra 2, and future courses after that. So this document really outlines the 8th grade skills missed. It outlines the algebra skills that we've chosen to skip because of depth of knowledge and readiness, as well as it sort of highlights the implications that are being put forth on our geometry teachers, our algebra 2 teachers, and our junior level pre-calculus teachers to know where those skills are hitting us hard, okay? Ultimately, there's a ton of tabs. I went unit by unit on 8th grade Common Core, and then I highlighted the extra units that we are teaching that are not 8th grade standards that our students have to get to be successful in an algebra course to move on to geometry. I know it's a lot there, and unpacking all of that, I think it's easy to kind of see why this is a stressor for us. Even though we as teachers are working hard and we're game on, I don't want to create problems and gaps for students in learning in the future throughout our decisions, and we want to make students feel confident and successful.
Because in reality, it creates more gaps.
Yeah.
Right, in essence. So, I mean, maybe Dan, you might have a better answer to what was the thought process of switching over to begin with? Was it on?
We knew when we were looking at new curriculum that we needed to find something that was a little more rigorous than what we had.
Yes, we definitely
prior
needed.
to, you know.
We needed to, if we were updating curriculum, we needed to hit something, have a resource that had 8th grade Common Core skills. As Terry mentioned, our previous standards were aligned by, or were ABD, aligned to ACT, and they didn't really match the Common Core standards. So nothing spoke really well, and our 8th grade scores and data shows that we are struggling. And a lot of that is because in the past we weren't teaching 8th grade standards, and instead of bringing in 8th grade standards to teach our students, we're now skipping a lot of 8th grade standards and teaching algebra, which is still not what we're testing our students on when it comes to forward testing.
It's like it's a house of cards, right? If we don't have the foundation, then nothing built beyond that will actually be successful for our students.
that's how we feel.
Because we would mention later during our high school update is that the algebra strand on ACT is by far our weakest.
It's playing out when we do our update as well. Our trending data of proficiency rates for our students in math, I mean, we're trending in the wrong direction consistently, and we're projecting our forward data this school year to continue in that trend based upon our projections for math.
Yeah.
So there's gaps that are happening, and we just feel like an adjustment needs to be made.
Sounds appropriate.
At the high school level, Brenda, you might be able to speak to this, but it seems like there has been a lot of efforts in remediation for ninth graders. And we even have, 10th graders and beyond, like, still struggling with Algebra 1 skills.
Well, it's so funny you mentioned implications at the high school.
It's like the next, it's the next slide. Look at that.
On cue.
Timed that very well. Here's some evidence of that.
So a piece of data that we grabbed to kind of show how this is playing out in our high school. So students that take 8th grade algebra, so that's all of our students who aren't taking geometry in 8th grade, if they do not get a C or higher, C minus,
If they get a C minus,
they're retaking, they're moving on.
Even Ds are technically Ds can move on. We don't recommend. Teachers would not recommend that you're getting a D, but according to our structure, if you pass the class, you get to move on. And I think we all know passing like that is not solidifying our knowledge in the standards.
So currently, our 9th graders, we have 52 students who are retaking algebra because they weren't successful with it at North. Additionally, there's another 10 students who are taking some sort of like before algebra course that's not represented in this data section. So we've got around 60 kids that took algebra with us in 8th grade and then weren't successful and needed something more. One of the arguments I think for algebra for all in 8th grade is that having that high level of rigor, that exposure in 8th grade prepares students to be more successful, even if they fail in 8th grade, that they would be more successful seeing it again than in 9th grade. And I think this data really counters that argument. So when you're looking at that 15% of students, those are 15% of students that are currently failing algebra as 9th graders. In 8th grade, 75% of those students failed, 25% of those students fell in that C to D range. 46% of our kiddos that are retaking algebra again got a C or D in 8th grade. Now 75% of those kids are failing. So we're not seeing increased success rates out of our students by having double exposure to that. I think that points to the argument of there's some missing skills, understanding, some gaps there, as opposed to seeing the same thing over and over isn't filling those gaps.
Yeah.
Nor is it helping the belief of those students.
No, I was gonna say, you just get kind of excited about math.
Yep.
Because I would know. That was not my strong
Kind
suit.
of teed that next one.
I know.
Did you see our
So speaking of
presentation?
We're all in cahoots.
What?
So there's a little explaining to go with the graphs before we dive into them. We asked our students on a Likert scale, so 0 to 4, we asked them these questions and to rate themselves. So 0 to 2 represents them not agreeing or not feeling strong about this. The 0 to 2 is represented in the blue.
Yes.
While the 3 to 4, so I agree with this, I feel good about it, is represented in the red. So red is good, not red is bad.
Yeah.
And so you can see our students throughout the years are increasing in their lack of belief that they are good at math, that they're prepared to be successful in their course. The other big takeaway for me was we understand like developmentally students' focus on learning can look different as they get older, but when I move from 6th to 7th grade, I've got like a smaller increase, but then when I moved to 8th grade, that is quite the leap in my self-efficacy in math. And then we have students that are in 8th grade saying, I don't feel like I'm great at this. And then we're putting them in an incredibly rigorous expectation and saying, sorry, we have to race through it to get to the end because we don't have time because we've got to make sure you get to this point because otherwise you have to be here in the summer. So our kids are telling us that they're not feeling successful and we're not able to be responsive to that.
And is it the case too that they need some are needing tutoring, extra tutoring, more than
So,
just summer school or
We've
during the
had a
school
number
year?
of families that have told us they've gotten tutors for their students in algebra and to be able to keep them up to speed. Some of our families have come in and said, what do we do to help our student be successful in algebra? And unfortunately, at times the answer is, don't worry, they can take it again in high school. And that's not an answer, right? We don't have another pathway available.
Yeah,
So that's why we wanna bring the option to talk about what are some different ways that we can have pathways for people.
yeah, definitely.
This just again, it's another data point of like, do kids feel like they were prepared? 30% of our students in algebra in 8th grade are saying, I did not feel prepared for this by the courses that I took to get here. We also wanted to talk to our families and talk about their perspective. So we did a Google form, I think it was in one of the newsletters. This slide here just really shows that we really got a great. Yeah, you get to come.
You see the screen good? Okay.
Yeah, you are a part of it.
Thanks, yes.
I was a teenager, that was over.
And by the way, we
Don't
are
be
live
shy.
streaming right now,
Yeah.
so just
No expletives.
So when I came to you guys and talked about the schedule change, one of the big conversation points was like the just like lack of response that we got in parent perspective and feedback. I included this in here to show like we really did get a lot of feedback from our parents. I asked our families like, what grades do you have students in? Because we know we have families with students across all of the different grade levels. So we've got a good representation of families that have had people go through all of the curriculum at North, a good representation of if we make this change, those younger kiddos are the ones who are gonna be more affected by it, so those families gave us some feedback as well. We also have a good representation, I think it's that 36% is that number of the students who, like, I've had a kid that went through this pathway, so I've experienced it and can tell you what my perspective on it was. So then when we asked our families, what was your experience? So this, when you see the 69 responses, that's because that's a smaller set of families who have had a student that did 8th grade algebra. And 75% of our families said, yeah, it worked for my kids. But a number of our families, a quarter of our families said, I think it's appropriate for some students, but I don't think it's appropriate for all students. A very small percentage said, I don't think it's appropriate for anyone. But even our families that said, hey, it worked for my kids, they're saying, we don't know that it works for all of the students at North. When we talked to, we asked the question of all of our families, what do you think, that's that second pie graph there.
Oh, got it.
Do you believe that all 8th grade students should take algebra? So we did have about 40% of our families that said, yes, we think this is the right pathway, all of our students should take algebra. Most of our families said, I don't think everybody should take it, I think it should be a pathway and an option. I don't know what happened, why that green is separated from the red, it's essentially the same answer. So when we add those together, I've got math teachers in the room, which is anxiety provoking right now. That is about 55%, so over half of our families said, yes, we think it should be an option, but not necessarily something for all. So I also had a listening session for our students who were on our current accelerated pathway. So those students are students who come into North and they take 7th grade math in 7th grade. And
Sixth
sorry,
grade.
7th grade math in 6th grade. Thank you. And so we talked about we talked about the proposed changes and what the course sequencing looks like for our students who are taking those accelerated classes and the implications for their courses in high school. The feedback that we heard from families was, number one, they really liked the option of pathways and options for students. Number two, when you get the letter or the conversation or the phone call of your 4th grade student and you hear like, hey, your kid's great at math, do you want them to skip a math class? Our parents say like, yeah, that's great, I love it, my kid's been feeling like they need to be pushed, or I'm so glad that my kid has this strength area. they're not thinking through of the implications of what courses they're taking in high school. And when we're getting to the middle school ages and the high school, they're going, holy cow, I didn't realize I signed my kid up to take AP Calculus A and B. So talking through like what those implications were, as well as families were talking about like, sometimes we wanna hit the pause button and we want to slow down the train a little bit, and we don't currently have an option for that for our students because you've already taken that 7th grade math, so you can't take it again. So there's not like an exit pathway for our students as well. Additionally, there was a lot of concern from our families about those 8th grade standards being missed for their students. And families were like, is there a summer school course I can take? Can you sign my kid up for IXL? And they're talking about all of these extension things that our families shouldn't have to be doing because our course sequencing isn't giving them exposure to these different standards. Yeah. So here's the suggested pathways.
Okay, just
Yeah.
beware, we
Air traffic control.
This looks like an air traffic control
Oh, yeah.
problem. We
Not
should
too
look
bad,
at.
no.
It is,
This is
I
better.
feel like, how do
This
I
is
make
better.
this pretty?
Yeah, no,
And
I like it.
I had it for the
How do I make it
First
pretty?
teachers, oh, it was, and the parents.
well, for the listening session with the
Yeah.
accelerated families, I created a document and it had to be on like one of those long ones.
Mhm.
And then I just photocopied it because I didn't know how to make something. And I'm like, just so you know, this is why I'm not a graphic artist.
Yeah.
So I'll walk us through, but it is kind of complicated, right? Let's start with our students who are coming to us in 6th grade and are going to be taking 6th grade math. We would like to continue to have the option for our students to come in and take 6th grade math. Some of our students are going to continue on to 7th grade math. One of the struggles that we have with the current way that things are, well, let's just walk through, let's do each kind of pathway, because otherwise I think it gets kind of confusing. So we would like to have the option for 7th grade students to take 7th grade math. And then we would like for some of our students in 8th grade to be able to take 8th grade math, get access to those 8th grade standards, as opposed to hopping over them and taking algebra, which would then have those students taking algebra in 9th grade. Going back to our 6th grade, so we've got some students that come in and they take 6th grade math in 6th grade. We currently don't have a pathway for students who are maybe coming, like blooming into their math skills in 6th grade. Maybe their focus is there, maybe their development's there. Maybe there was something that happened in their, intermediate childhood that they've moved past and are now at a place that they're ready for more challenge. That acceleration is very difficult to do right now. What we would like to do is we would like to add in a 7th, 8th grade condensed course. You're gonna see this is gonna align with our students that have come in already taking 6th grade math as well. This is actually, and I have some handouts for you guys, this is actually the suggested pathway from our curriculum people. I made 4, luckily. I'm sorry they're giant but I looked through it and I was like, I don't know what's to wean out and what's not to wean out. So the suggested pathway from EdGEMS is students who are accelerated to take this, and it's gonna be the course 2 in that sequence. So course 1 is the 6th grade course 2 is the 7th, 8th grade condensed. What it does is it starts with 2 units that are largely found in our 7th grade math sequencing. Then it moves into 2 units that add on some 8th grade standards and go into a more robust understanding. Then it comes back to another 2 units that lay out that 7th grade understanding, and then it reaches into units that have, again, more 8th grade math understanding. So they're getting those 7th grade concepts, they're immediately building on it for those 8th grade math concepts. The pace is faster to be able to get through those standards. But it's a really nice sequencing and where it gives you that like spiraling of the 7th grade introduction first and then going deeper into it in that 8th grade. It is aligned with Common Core had an Appendix A that talked about what is best practices for accelerating students. This is aligned with that, in which the recommendation was some 7th grade units stay exactly the same, some 8th grade units stay exactly the same. And then you also build onto those 8th grade standards there. So it aligns really well. The curriculum, like there are people who this is their job to design these curriculums and how standards will spiral through in the exposures of students. this is the way it was designed. And we said, nope, we're gonna do something else despite the way that it was designed to grow skills in students. And I think it was a misstep. So we can take our students who take that 6th grade math, be able to say, hey, we can give you exposure to 7th and 8th grade standards, and then get them on a pathway that they could possibly take algebra in 8th grade, where we currently don't have that option of being able to get people accelerated or on a faster pathway.
Are you gonna be looking at kind of like how the student is progressing along with scores, or is there a specific test that you're using to say, do we wanna accelerate this student or push pause? Put,
Yes.
back on a different
So
pathway?
I'm gonna dive into that a little bit more in the
Okay, sure.
next slide, but what I can say is we're gonna use some map data points. We also dove into some unit assessment pieces that again, I think just screams the professionalism in our math department, cause I don't know that I've had math teachers that were willing to dive into that level. It's really, I can't wait to tell you about it. As well as parent recommendation. Like, we don't wanna be sitting in the seat and say, you have it and you don't. We wanna put the data in front of our families, say this is what we think is right, but you guys tell us which pathway, what you want your kid to take. So ultimately, the decision's in parents and families.
Each year you have that option, because
Where we have options to go
Yeah.
different ways, yes. So then if the student's a 6th grader, I'm doing great at math, they're scoring really well, we send it home to families, we say, do you want them to take the 7th, 8th grade condensed course in 7th grade? They say, yes, we wanna do that, they can take that, so then in 8th grade, they can take algebra, but there's also an exit strategy there. They can exit back into that 8th grade math. They will have some pre-exposure to some things, some greater background knowledge, but it's not 100% a repeat of the course, it is a different course. And so students that go like, hey, I tried this out, or maybe something happened, whatever, there's an exit strategy for students to get off of that pathway if that's what's right for them and their families. So then we still have our students that come in and have already taken 6th grade math before they get to North. We would like to have them in that 7th, 8th condensed course as well. I feel like despite the fact that these kids are shown that like they're math students, they're really great at it, despite the fact that they've got the study habits and the perseverance and the grit, we're disservicing them by not giving them the exposure to these standards. To say, you know what, we think it's important, and yet we're still not gonna give you guys exposure because you're good and you should be able to figure it out. So we'd like to add in that 7th, 8th grade condensed course where currently they just take 7th grade math. And then they would move directly into algebra currently. So now we can, again, we've got an exit strategy. Because our family said, you know what, my kid wanted to be pushed and they needed to be pushed, but my kid isn't like looking to be an actuary. And my kid likes to work hard, but doesn't necessarily want to take all of these AP calculus courses. So they have the opportunity to take that 8th grade math, still be able to take algebra in 8th grade, and then geometry in 9th grade, or they can stay on what's kind of looks like our current pathway. They take that 7th, 8th combined, do algebra in 7th, do geometry in 8th, and then move right into that algebra 2. Part of the piece with the parent communication as well is, I've worked up some templates of what the letter can look like. We wanna lay out for them, like, this is the courses your kids are gonna be taking in high school this is the typical course sequencing for our students in high school. Because we want people to make informed decisions with this.
Alright, absolutely.
I also have this one for you. This is, so the course sequence that you have right now will have the standards and pieces for the course 2 is the 7th, 8th condensed. The course 3 is the algebra. So when you look at those algebra standards, you're gonna see that 99% of them are all high school standards. The other thing that I really like when I dove into this a little deeper today is there is a course around, remind me again the name of the unit, Barb, that's really heavily tested or forward, but it doesn't show up in.
Transformations of shapes.
Yeah. So transformations of shapes is something that shows up on forward tests big time, as well as all of the state assessment. We're skipping right over it currently. Like our kids aren't even getting exposure to it, but that they're getting measured on these things that we're expected to show, like this is what proficient looks like, and we're not even giving our kids those things.
And then another little thing on that too, as a math teacher, transformations and functions is a really important high-level skill. And if you aren't diving into the shape and seeing how a shape moves as like a rectangle or a triangle on a graph, it's gonna be harder to see what those transformations do within a function, within an equation and something arbitrary. And so we skip a lot of those connecting pieces that make things more difficult in those future courses. And to many, it looks like something simple, and I'm like, that's the deep conceptual piece that our kids aren't getting and finding those relationships in the future.
So I have a similar pathway, so this is the typical EdGEMS, not without the condensed course or any sort of acceleration. So in here, in that course 3, is where you're gonna see the 8th grade standards that are covered. What I was doing, and I didn't know how to do this in a way to make it easy for you guys, is I pulled up those algebra standards and those 8th grade standards, and I saw all of these gaps. So I wanted you guys to have access to this as well, in case you wanted to nerd out on that like I did.
So it looks like we're adding more options in regards to courses for our students, which is great because it's more tailored to the individual student from one year to the next. And I think that's a really good thing, but how is that looking staffing wise? And obviously, for the teachers who have to teach, you.
I see it as a positive thing because students will be where they need to be or are ready for. I think one thing that could happen that we should be fully transparent on is 7th graders in that condensed course. It might make sense to put them with 6th graders so that we're not having to add different sections. Or if we want 8th graders in algebra, they could be in a course with 7th graders in algebra, so we're not adding in those extra sections. Just so that's something new that students have not experienced, but they do it in the high school when they go and take, geometry and algebra 2 and things like that.
The other really nice thing is our schedule makes this work.
This will make it
Without
work.
our schedule change, we wouldn't have this flexibility. We have math courses that are happening across grade levels that we can move students around, so we have the flexibility to be able to offer the sections and be responsive and be able to shift from year to year as well. It's
And I personally feel having staff that is teaching different levels of those courses, it makes the connections much easier too. If you only are familiar with just what's in that 7th grade course, it's hard to make connections to what came before and what comes after. So if we have more exposure with it too, it helps all the way across the board.
Yeah, good point.
I know as high school certified people, we've always taught multiple courses and that's not a problem. It's, something that I prefer.
So is this the place we wanna talk about? Again, the spirit of transparency, we do currently have a board policy around acceleration.
Okay.
And the one thing it doesn't allow for in writing is accelerate or parent choice. Within the process, it's very delineated about these are the kids based on this percentage, you have to be, what is it, the 85th percentile, you have to move forward. So I'm cautious about calling this acceleration because many kids are still ending up at the same point, algebra. We just are having different pathways to get there. But I think the parent choice is really important because I think that data that we're looking at sometimes can be really limiting based on how kids are, how they test.
Yeah.
And when we look at the data on, how kids are feeling, there are still many of them who are feeling successful. So I wanna make sure that as many kids as possible get into the math class that's right for them. And if they feel they can tackle algebra, they should try algebra. And I believe we should tell them, no, you can't because your test scores aren't high enough. In practice, there are already situations where parents call and, just question the decision.
Right.
And so I think, there are individual situations we continue to work out even with that policy being in place. So again, when we're keeping algebra kind of the standard and a kid's moving to 8th grade math instead, it's not acceleration, it's just getting to the right pathway for you. Ultimately, do we maybe need to revisit that acceleration policy? That would be something I'd like to bring forward.
What policy is that?
I don't remember what number.
I know. We'll look it up.
Yeah.
I'm on both, yeah.
But it's nice to have that half step with the 7th and 8th grade condensed, it's like a good,
I mean, my primary focus is making sure that we tend to the students who are struggling and
Yes.
we recognize that and we help elevate them. But then also those who are accelerated, we continue that rigor
Mhm.
to keep them, you know, obviously interested and engaged, and we don't compromise their, you know, potential. So
And
as long as we have that on a
100%.
spectrum, I'm good. I mean, that's it, so you guys are willing to do it, I'm good.
and my biggest concern too was like, just keep, pushing them, like
Mhm.
not just settling, like
Yes.
keep pushing and
So
setting the bar high, the bar is there for them to reach, and it's attainable.
yes, and so infusing that parent
Mhm.
advocacy point, I think really,
Yeah.
and the student, students can advocate for themselves as well, I think is really important. I just wanted to be transparent about where that policy was, but what is happening in practice.
Because I can tell from personal experience, my kids who were obviously the accelerated, and there was one where she's like, I'm done.
Mhm.
I was like, I'm not having it, this is not my thing, I know I'm there, but I just don't, I'm like,
Yeah, so
okay,
that was
okay,
like an example.
We'll just let you, and I had to actually call to see if we can, bring her down, to the lower, course, so that's also an option, and then now she wants to go back up, so it just really
As the
varies.
interest level changes
Yeah,
though,
it's
too,
just-
and
it's
the other
really-
course load has a huge impact.
Course load makes a big difference too.
100%, and there's still an option to accelerate in high school, if you really want to, you can. It sounds a little painful to take geometry and algebra two at the same time, and I say that as someone who's got a minor in math.
I did,
Yeah.
We're starting to have those conversations too, like how can we make that work well? I mean, with our alternate day block, we might be able to do something different, so.
So yeah, I think there are more conversations to have after we
Mhm.
make this shift, so this won't be a one and done, math program update, but.
And so ultimately, we're looking for some higher test scores too, and get that
Yes.
moving back in the other direction.
Correct.
And hopefully this will be helpful in doing that. It sounds like the 8th grade kind of needs to be in there at one level or the other,
Yes.
those
Yeah,
standards.
whatever's best for them,
Yeah.
so,
Where's the communication when they can bump up, like if you maybe notice even like mid-semester, is that even a thing or
That would be
where
pretty
would-
hard
where would
because
the
then again,
timing be?
so the timing that we're looking at, and you wanna go to the next one, the timing that we're looking at is to look at the end of the school year so that we've completed those standards that we have. We don't wanna create more gaps by
Okay.
moving somebody on ahead of time. We do spring math testing. We are math testing math next week. My hope is if this moves forward, I will have letters going out to families that Tuesday after Memorial Day
Mhm.
saying, here's your kid's data, here's where you've got, get this back to us, let us know if you wanna go with the recommendation or if you would like to select a different course for them. So we wanna be as responsive and use the most, the most timely data that we can.
Sure.
Do teachers also have the flexibility and option of also if they see and recognize a student in the class to recommend moving on? Because some kids are great, but the testing, the math, they're
Early in
just
the
not-
year,
it
that's,
takes
Like their
early in the
performance.
year, that's easier to be done, but there is a point where we reach skills that if they've missed them, it's just hard to make those jumps. So really probably if we're putting a timeline, first quarter is probably this time that we have to have made those decisions by.
But I would also say if you're thinking at the end of the year when parents and students get this information, that would be something where I would be very open to, if parents have questions, I'm not sure, what decision do we make? I think that's a perfect opportunity to contact your child's teacher and then we can weigh in with, yes, I think they could certainly handle this would be good, or okay, they wanna do this, here are some concerns that you just need to be aware of. I think that that's where maybe some of those conversations would happen too, is that if they are not sure, I think we would be good resources for now, how can I get more information to make an informed decision?
Yeah, especially if it's like on the fence, like maybe the
Right.
performance wasn't as great on the test
Yes.
or on the math testing, but yet the teacher sees all the work put in day to day and they can know they can push themselves to the next level. Okay, very good.
So the teachers identified cutoffs at looking at student data, student performance,
Okay.
MAP scores of where they felt like students should be falling in percentiles with their MAP data for which course that they would recommend. But additionally, the teachers dove into the standards of which are the really important prerequisite skills in the previous year's math courses. And we're intending to put that on our parents' forms of, hey, we know your kid really needs this skill. This is the summative assessment that they did with that in 7th grade math. Here's how they scored. Wow, they really killed it. They seem to have all these prerequisite skills. Or look, we're seeing some gaps, so maybe they don't have the skills to be able to move up to that next level. So it's not just a single, we understand that one data point doesn't represent our students completely. To be able to look at how are they performing in the classroom on those necessary prerequisite skills and put that information in front of parents. I think I said this before, this just like screams the professionalism of our math department to be able to take that work, dive into there and figure out what are the assessments where we're really measuring those things.
Which leads to my next question, so obviously like you have dove in deep and you have your standards in each one of these books in a breakdown and it's easier to understand, so thank you for that. This EdGEMS math is definitely the program that you would recommend like going with. You don't believe that it's the curriculum that was causing some of that deficiency, it was kind of the way it was being presented and the gaps that were being caused.
Standards, so. I don't know
So
that
this
I've heard
curriculum
any love
should
the
be a-
curriculum.
Yeah,
Nothing
better
wrong.
fit, okay,
Yeah.
good enough.
It's just the sequence of the courses.
The sequence of the
Yes.
courses.
Yep.
You all, there has been nothing but glowing feedback on this curriculum and
Okay.
And so when this was when the curriculum itself was piloted, one of the pilot groups piloted the 8th grade math course.
We did with at that time, with the ABD stuff and ACT standards, our algebra students, regular algebra students in 8th grade, were piloting the 8th grade Common Core. Our students that were in enriched algebra and our grade skipped 7th graders piloted the algebra course. And we felt that, yes, but we felt that the 8th grade standards were really solid for our students that were in
And
algebra.
the pacing was
The pacing was
appropriate
good.
for those students.
When did you guys pilot it? About
Spring after, in the hybrid year.
The
Yeah.
spring when you're going
Spring of that, opening up after COVID.
So the only piece of the course sequence that wasn't actively piloted was the 7th and 8th grade, which is a combination of the two, so.
There were some units that our 7th grade teachers did use, so that they could get some of those 8th grade parts in for students that we figured would go to algebra. It wasn't a full
It
pilot,
wasn't a
but
pilot.
there were some of the materials that were used.
But you were comfortable with that 7th and 8th grade
Yeah.
combined?
And it really is the 7th grade course and the 8th grade course things put together. It's nothing new or different, it's just
Yeah.
a different combination of the way it
Okay, so
is.
essentially, everything's been tried out in one way or another.
Okay.
So.
very good. And then we also talked about like the family's ability to choose which the pathway is.
Yeah.
We figured we'd wanna have an idea of like where are our students falling and what's the percentages going to look like of kids taking different classes. These are soft and squishy numbers and these are largely based upon math results because we don't know what our family's preferences are going to be. We have the ability with our schedule to be really responsive, but we're picturing around 60% of our students would take that 8th grade math. It'll be really interesting to see how that actually plays out. But we wanted to show that like we're expecting an increase of our students taking that course.
Which is good news.
Yeah,
You
like
know,
it's the right
according to the
fit for
test,
them then.
right, correct.
Yeah.
According to the scores, yeah.
So there are some financial implications with the change. So our course textbooks have a digital license, so we can ship those around with EdGEMS at no fee. But we don't have texts for the 8th grade math or texts for the 7th, 8th combined courses. It would be approximately $7,500 to get the texts as well as some teacher materials, which would be about $150. I have that room in my building budget and I would be able to make that purchase with the budget that I have for this school year.
And if,
Amy likes that.
yeah, well, if we end up with some money left over, then we can certainly help.
Sure.
But it was definitely not something we had planned for this year, so, Terry has some carryover, so.
Yeah.
She was
Wow.
willing to.
I'm not a spender.
Well, it's not like I am either.
No.
I haven't gone crazy, but, you know.
But you would take it on if,
Yes,
okay.
if she couldn't, and we would find a way to make it work, but,
Great.
yeah, it's.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah. It's an important use of it, right? Like
Yeah.
this is something that is
Yeah,
directly
I'm excited to
affecting.
see it in
And then,
action.
as far as like this added cost to things, how long are you expecting, is there like an access point for the digital, or how long do you expect these course books to last?
So we would go on to the current contract that we have with EdGens with the digital license, so I think we have 4 years left on
That was correct, it was
it. Yeah, it was a 6-year
Okay.
license, so that comes up at 4 years. It wouldn't be an additional expense to us then at the time that license runs out, as opposed to what it would be whether we adopted this or not. Because the actual extra expense is the texts right now, because they're not gonna take our algebra texts back.
Right.
So we're gonna have some extras of those, but the numbers will all kind of even out when it's that 6-year comes up, that is the expense that we would see happening then.
And the implementation is.
That would be ideal.
Okay,
Sounds great.
questions?
Questions?
I think we kind of scattered them throughout.
It's fine. I started writing them down, I'm like, wait, I'm gonna forget what's going on here, I gotta jump in, I'm sorry.
Alright, any other questions or discussion? Okay. I'll need a motion to approve the proposed 8th grade math course to begin in 2023-2024 school year.
Oh, motion,
1 second.
please.
Oh, did I do something wrong?
With the way it's presented, we should probably approve the 2 courses, the 7-8 combined course and the 8th grade course.
Okay, good
Because
call.
technically those are new courses.
They'll be listed separate.
Okay,
So I'm sorry, you said 7th and 8th
The
combined?
7th, 8th combined
Yeah.
course
And
and
Or
the
condensed.
8th grade.
So 2 separate motions.
And the 8th grade. Okay, so we'll do 8th grade first.
Well, she could just motion both and I'll.
Yep, if you wanna motion both, you can.
sure.
Oh,
I'll
as
motion.
it, okay.
Makes it easy.
Mhm.
I'll second both of them.
Okay.
But
All in
but I
favor?
like the technicality, yeah, you have to.
Okay, this is a curveball for me, you guys, on my
Yeah.
first day. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Do you guys feel the excitement?
I was gonna say, I know we're gonna see some math teachers dance out of the room.
Thank you.
This is.
Oh, you're
I,
We're so excited, I can't wait to hear all
Well,
about it. I mean, give us the play-by-play every
very
month.
excited.
Very, be great.
Barbara's been the
it's the right-
champion
yeah.
for this.
That's I think Brenda has too.
Appreciate it.
High school, so,
Yeah.
thank you for all of the work you did around the standards, that was super helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
In, making it clear to me as,
Mhm.
a new leader in the district, as well as others, that this, I mean, I could see the emotion in it when we first talked about it, that it was definitely a need, and, this helps make it, clear in many different ways, so thank you.
It's good for our
And
students.
you may dance out of the room.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, that would be nice to see those math scores coming up then.
Yeah.
I think this will start us on the path.
Get us
It'll help.
going
It
that
won't be
way.
an overnight,
Correct.
as you know, it takes multiple years, but we
They're
will.
both like
Yeah.
pretty
Something new. Okay,
Alright,
moving right along.
that was great, I was gonna say, we're no longer on time.
Okay,
Sorry.
great, that's great,
It's
it'll be
okay.
alright.
It's okay, this
It's all
was
good.
important, and we wanted
We
to
talk
be
fast,
clear.
Okay, so we're moving along to the discussion item, correct? I wanna make sure I'm
Yes.
following it right. We have,
North Middle School.
North Middle School.
Update.
Oh, yep,
So Terry Kovars again and Brandon Rock, our associate principal of the middle school, are here to provide their academic update. Do you want me to go ahead and share? Or
You guys don't have the slide
No,
deck?
I do.
Initial.
We have your piece, I think Dan's gonna share his,
The high
so.
school, we modified them
Oh, you're
prior
special.
to, I do, sure.
Okay, so, oh, go ahead.
Is it the right one?
Yeah, yes,
Okay,
yes, yours
okay,
is.
cool.
This year, each school is coming to the CNL committee one time. In previous years, we did it more frequently, this being an unusual year with so many new people and setting our goals later than we normally would. So they're coming just to share a quick update, overall high-level update. But as we're goal setting during the year, of course, or at the beginning of the year, we focus on our mission and vision. So I wanted to include that as well as our big aims, things that we are working on in the district. And then the 3 pieces we have that help us focus on improvement across the system, just developing that culture for improvement, developing clear goals, and using clear processes. So that is an ongoing, continuous process.
Yes, so we're gonna start talking about math again.
Yeah,
So what I have on this
Or not.
slide is,
Yeah.
so the chart with the red, yellow, green, blue, that is our math results. So math tests can project forward proficiency rates. The forward proficiency rate, math typically talks about percentiles, so a student who scores in the 50th percentile is about like, scores a score that if we took all of the 7th graders and lined them up, I'm right in the middle of all of the 7th graders. That is actually below proficiency for forward. So we wanna take a look at what are our proficiency rates because we want all of our students to be proficient or higher. And then on the other side with the graph, on the right-hand side with the orange, yellow, purple, blue, that is from our report card and that's our proficiency rates for past years on the forward. So you're going to see the trend of an increasing percentage of our students being basic or below basic. And that trend is currently projected to continue to play out in our math performance on the forward. Students already took the forward, but we don't have those results, right?
Right.
If the proficiency rates, the math data that we have is from winter. We're currently taking the spring, so we don't have that data to share. But based upon what our students did in the winter, projected to be proficient on the forward, we're expecting to see a 5% increase in students who are basic or below basic. So less students who are showing to be proficient. What I can say in looking at our data as well is our 6th grade group is our strongest performing math group. Our 8th grade group is our weakest performing math group. When I look at their growth rates, our 8th grade group grew really well. Our 6th grade group did not grow as much as we would hope them to. Again, it is my hope that changing some of these sequences is going to change some of those results. When I look at 8th grade proficiency rates, we're currently not teaching the standards that kids are tested on. So it's a measure of what they're bringing in their background knowledge, not necessarily what we're teaching. The second slide is our ELA proficiency rates. So this was an identified area of focus for us for this past school year. So when you look at the 2021-2022 proficiency rates, you see a significant increase in students who are basic or below basic. We took a look at that data with our leadership team over the summer, and we hypothesized that the change in our data was a result of the text-dependent analysis question on the ELA forward. Students get a text section, they read it, and they're asked to write an essay response to that text section. That was removed from the 2020-2021 forward exam. So the theory and our hypothesis was our results decreased because of that, our performance on that text-dependent analysis. Amy found a really, really cool forward item analysis that I've never seen before. And it played out to fruition. What our hypothesis was 100% true. Our students performed very poorly on that text-dependent analysis, and because of that, our proficiency rates significantly decreased. That has been an area of focus for us this school year. That's been our school growth goal. That's something that we're working on cross-curricularly, as well as, obviously a big focus of our ELA classroom.
And if you remember from those of you who were here, the academic update that I did in December, we had identified that as a system-wide update. Yep, there it is.
I got it too.
So yeah, so
Okay.
that was
I
something.
remember you talking about that.
Yeah, that was a major factor in the drops we saw in English Language Arts Forward last year.
Yeah.
As we really dug into it, so every school has beefed that up this year and done more practice around that,
I
so,
think we went from 45 to 35%.
right, yeah.
We dipped.
I don't have it memorized, but yeah, I think that was a significant drop,
Okay.
and so,
The other really uplifting piece is when we look at our math results, again, winter, we're expected to see a 5% shift from students who were testing basic or below basic up to being proficient. Now, what I will caution us is MAP is a reading test. Forward ELA measures reading,
Yeah.
listening, conventions, which is like your grammar stuffs, and writing. So it is not as reliable in ELA as it is in math. So while data looks good, like we're going to see some growth, we hope that plays out in fruition because we're not actually getting an accurate measure of our students' performance on that text-dependent analysis through the MAP, though we've done some practice and some internal, like everybody did an assessment and our ELA teachers analyzed it, gave kids feedback, so we've gotten some of that informal feedback of where we're expecting students to perform.
Just had a quick question. Dan, do you know when, in middle school you switched from the math, switching to gym, to algebra? What year? 'Cause I
The
have,
full year, the full first year was my last year there, so last year, 21, 22.
21, 22, because I have, a report from like the math from 1920. 2020, I'm sorry, 2019
That's
to
like me and
2020
Wednesday.
to see, and so I was just, like, when you were saying that if we switch back and the numbers would change, because I see it from here. I just was wondering if what we did before versus a switch and then now coming back, that would be interesting in the numbers. Okay, so 2020, the full year.
It's not uncommon to see an implementation dip with a new
Yeah.
curriculum that's put in, it's not always, it doesn't always happen too, but it's something that we look for.
Because I just had it from the previous one, so. okay,
And then,
sorry.
is it common for the skills that they look for on the forward testing and the math testing to change, or can we kind of predict what those are gonna be? But not necessarily just teach to test,
Correct,
But
but it is
helps us
aligned
sort
to the Wisconsin state standards.
Mhm.
And it does, the test, there's a large question bank that can be pulled, and the test is computer adaptive, so as a student answers questions correctly, they get more challenging questions. And then
to really give a gauge.
yeah, so the test ultimately is designed for kids to get about 50% of the questions correct, and that's their level.
Okay.
So, and it does, the test, they renorm and do different things every 5 years or so.
Okay,
But it's, they calibrate, they do field testing, so they calibrate, how, what the score should be based on the difficulty of the question, so.
Okay.
But it should stay, they recalibrated or renormed in 2020, so we've got a couple more years before it switches up a little bit,
sure.
likely. Okay, Carrie, you got about 6 minutes.
Brandon's got
Wow.
Yeah, no,
I just
so,
wanna make sure we have time for the high school,
yeah, I would
so.
say, attendance behavioralized, cause that's a big component of, our academics. 90%, 95% of our students are doing what they're supposed to do. Wonderful kids coming to school. I think we have 87% of our students are at school, 90% or more, which is like the district threshold for that. We've been trying to do things to incentivize students to do that, so we had 32 students who had perfect attendance for a semester. And that means like they weren't tardy to any classes, nothing like that, like they were on
Yeah.
time, and so we had a little hot chocolate and donut party for them, which was fun,
Yeah, right?
So just,
Pure sugar.
taking a look at what can we do with some of our students who are not getting to school a lot, and so you all know the mental health is a real thing, and we have a lot of our students who are, bringing those numbers down just because we have a chunk of them that just aren't coming to school very rarely or ever. So we do meet and talk about attendance. I meet with our student services team every other week, and we talk attendance, and we kind of take a look at the students who aren't meeting that threshold, and we are proactive with that, sending letters to families, whether they're tardy or truant, if they have that medically excused 10-day, we send a letter out. We do meet with families and just have discussions about strategies to get them to school. A lot of it, and one of our kind of deltas, things we want to work on is our first hour tardies. Getting kids to school on time is a huge thing. So 50% of our tardies or 49% of our tardies are based on like that first hour. As opposed to the rest of the school day, when we get them there, for the most part, they're getting to class on time. We do have a system set up with the teachers that if they're, missing or late to class 3 times, we calm down, we talk to them after that, then we give them lunch attention, and I don't need to bore you with all that stuff, but that hasn't been a real issue, and the biggest thing I think with our new schedule next year is we'll actually have bells, so there won't be that kind of arguing of am I on time or am I not on time?
True.
So that's gonna be very nice and kind of compare the data with this year and next year with that, so. Go ahead.
Are you guys still struggling with like COVID cases affecting some of your attendance?
Not really.
Not really.
There was a
Died down.
period, it wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily COVID, but there was
Strep.
like a sickness period, yeah, strep
Yeah,
was bad,
strep, yeah.
influenza was really bad.
Yeah.
Was it
think
February
our-
was just brutal.
Yeah, in October for some reason, October to
Yeah.
November, we had a
Was the
ton
high,
of kids
yeah.
out, I was like, yeah, if you look at the, it's pretty level, but the October, November, we had a ton of kids that were.
Weird sicknesses.
Now you're talking about that, I feel like I gotta sneeze. With the tardies, do you break it down ever, like to know why?
Like late
Does
buses.
it ever, like, yeah,
Late
like
buses
No.
are
parents
They're
are
excused,
off
okay.
or?
Yeah, no, we excuse all that stuff, but that's the biggest thing we're talking about is like, especially middle school, high school's a little different, cause a lot of kids drive themselves there, but like
It's a
middle
parental
school is like,
Yeah,
is it, and like, so, right, so it's like,
like a parental problem.
we can kind of go back and forth, some of our kids walk, so it's like, we're getting them to school, but it's a big like, you know, do we punish kids if they're not getting to school because they're getting dropped off away from parents but then it's, some kids just don't get up in the morning and parents are trying, so
yeah,
it's a lot of give and take, and that's where we have those conversations with parents, and students and try and brainstorm like how to get kids to school on time, and that's a focus for next year, but as Terry said, it's like the $1 million, if you can get that figured out, like we can write some books or something. So we do meet with student services, just to go through attendance. The other weeks, we typically meet with student services and our behavioral interventionists and Terry's there as well. And we go through and look at students of concern, so it could be attendance, it could be grades, it could be behavior. I think we have a very similar system to the high school where we give out minors and majors, so 3 minors typically equals a major. This year we had 155 majors and 406 minors, so that was very similar to what was last year as well. We did have a few more suspensions this year, so we had 53 in school and 23 out of school, so our out of school suspensions were up about 10. So just a little bit higher than in previous years. But another big thing that we look at is, you know, that hallway, we've talked about that as well. That kind of goes with getting the class on time and just us being able to be in the hallways now. We had some issues with down by our 7th grade science rooms, which is the 8th graders are there, but our 7th grade teachers are teaching, and I think we've talked about this before. But just us popping down and being down there for a couple of days, so like the hallways clear out very quickly. I was at high school the other day and just seeing, you know, Jeff there and the kids see him and he kind of gets them moving and they were on their way to class, yeah, so we're excited for that because a lot of our behaviors, I mean, over a quarter of them have to, like it's hallways where kids are being louder, they're, you know, disrupting other classes and teachers are getting frustrated, so that's a big thing as well. As far as, excuse me, cell phones, another big thing, so we're looking at backpacks and cell phones for next year and what we're gonna do with that. Like, you know, we spend a lot of time just having conversations with kids about keeping their cell phones away, and that becomes an issue in class as well, so.
Do you feel like consistency with overall like staff with in regards to discipline and cell phones and all of that, like you have a good team that's kind of viewing things the same way and everyone's on the same track?
Yeah, I mean, that's always gonna be, right, like the consistency with the adults in the building is always a thing, right? But we definitely try to, you know, coach them through that, like, you know.
Communicate those
See-
expectations,
Yep.
keep it forefront all the time, et cetera.
And another big thing that we're gonna talk about at the end here is just that parent communication when a student does have a minor. Whose responsibility is it if Brian and I and Terry, like that would be our job all day if we were just calling on minors, so.
Right.
You know, being able to kind of push that to the teachers a little bit and they saw it and they, you know, give more clear details as to what happened with parents, then we could step in if there's a concern or something like that, so that's something we're looking at next year to kind of streamline.
Sure.
Like teachers are gonna take care of minors more, and we'll obviously deal with the major issues in the, you know, wherever it takes place in our school.
Okay.
So just quickly, some fun things, like I said, a lot of our students are doing what they're supposed to be doing, so athletics and activities, we have a ton going on at North for, you know, as many students as possible. We have game club, we have HOSA, we have FBLA, we have obviously all different kinds of sports. there's art club, so there's a lot of things going on. We had 413 students participate, so that's 48%. That's something that we'd like to see continue to increase and you know, maybe that's something that I would look at next year as being proactive and more proactive as to getting sixth graders signed up for things, even though they have a little bit more limited options as far as that until they get into seventh and eighth grade, but making sure students like have something that they can go to and feel a part of. And then obviously we have, you know, the music and stuff that's not included, it's just after school activities and athletics. Our end of the year field trip, this number's gonna change a little bit, it's probably over 95%, not 99, because we haven't talked about grades, but basically to be eligible to go to the end of the year field trip, you have to meet the requirements for attendance, and then also your grades, you can't have more than one F. And then the last one is making sure you don't have any more than one major or 3 minors. So right now, over 95% of our students are eligible, so we're kids are getting excited about that, it's the end of the school year. Go ahead. Oh, it's fine. So 8th grade goes to Great America, 7th grade goes to Noah's Ark, which is hit or miss, it's nice out. And then 6th grade goes to Urban Air, I believe it is. Yeah, so students are getting excited about that. You know, FBLA is 7th consecutive state championship, you guys can all look at this because I know we're short on time, but we had 100 members go to that, that was really a cool experience. We had 4 state champions and 6 that were in 2 teams of 3, and then we had 33 other that finished 2nd or 3rd, and then HOSA was a new thing this year, and our kids really dove into that and had a great time with that. Julie Petzel ran that, and we had 28 members go and 10 state champions out of the 28, so that was pretty cool. And then 17 other students finished 2nd or 3rd. Our athletics are very strong, we typically finish in the top half of our conference. Not that it's a huge thing in middle school, but it is for the middle school kids. So we have our girls, I think they came to the school board earlier in the year and they were our Braveland champs, our conference champs, so there's just some pictures there. HOSA, girls basketball, and then our FBLA members up in Green Bay at state, so like I said, 95% of our kids are having awesome experiences and doing a great job at North, and so focusing on them, but also building up that other 5 or 10%.
So the things that we focused on this school year, we talked about the text-dependent analysis piece. And the image on the right-hand side is the pathway that we created, co-created with our leadership team at North of what were the steps or the pathways to be able to ensure that our students are able to respond to a text and be able to perform at a proficient rate on there. So we identified the things that we were doing and the steps that we needed to do to ensure that our students were able to reach that proficient rate with our building goal of 45% of all students being proficient on the ELA portion of the forward exam. So that was our growth piece that we were looking for. Another piece that we dove into was our core beliefs. We talked a lot about how being a middle school, you're kind of that middle child. And kids are coming to us from their elementary schools and having an identity there and really strong belief in the school and what they're just feeling a part of that school community. And then coming to the middle school, it's like that middle stop between the high school, and we saw a lot of Falls High School gear and really more focus on being a part of Menominee Falls High School, but what does it mean for us in the middle, and what is our identity here? So we talked as a staff about what our core beliefs are, and these are the beliefs that we're going to bring all of our decision making back to. So these were co-created or group created with the whole staff through a variety of different collaborative activities that we came to, and when they kind of became fleshed out and were shared for the staff, we asked people to literally stand for it. I said, what from the feedback that you guys had and what you said as your beliefs, that we believe that relationships are essential to what we do. If you believe that, can you stand up? So the core beliefs that we fleshed out were relationships are essential, that education is a civil right, every student has the right to 1 year's growth, and that's our job and calling to ensure that every student is growing and getting an education, that all students can learn, and that this one, I straight up teared up when I said it in front of the staff, that through our collective efforts as a staff, that we have the power and the ability to facilitate that change and positive outcomes for our students. Hattie, who's a renowned educational researcher put that as one of his most important levers for student success is collective advocacy. When we as a staff believe that what we're doing can move kids, it's that like what you believe you bring to fruition. So when we believe that we can move this needle for kids, we actually do it. We also worked on our PLCs, or our professional learning community, and what teaming and collaboration looks like. That's something you're gonna see on the next slide that we wanna keep working on. We wanna make sure that we're working on how do we collaborate, because all of our brains together, that collective advocacy again, what we do together is greater than what we can do separate. And we obviously looked at our schedule change as well as the math change analysis. So next steps for North include continuing working on that PLC work, continuing working on what teaming looks like. We wanna start looking at what's an instructional framework or a skeleton of instruction for our teachers. We don't have a common understanding of what high quality instruction looks like in our building, and we wanna create that skeleton so that we can then give our teachers feedback on how they're doing. I wanna build in peer observations where I'm walking into department classrooms with the department chair and saying, hey, we saw this great opportunity where we had our entry routine and our do now posted there. Our objectives are clear for our students. These are common best practices in our industry, and we know that these are good practices, but they're things that you slip away from. Also with the skeleton, we leave plenty of space for the art of teaching, for teachers to be their personalities, to be who they are, as well as to craft great engaging opportunities like Socratic seminars and things like that for our students. But like having common expectations and giving feedback around that's just gonna increase our outcomes for our kids. And then in our schedule, we have STAR time next year, so really making sure that we are using that as a high leverage time, that it's implemented with fidelity, that the things that we're doing there are high quality activities. I think that's gonna be a huge focus. We've already started looking at that and planning that for next school year with our math and ELA team, but that's gonna be a big focus for next year for us. And then Brandon talked about that increased parent communication, in particular around our students that are doing great. And then when we're slipping up and we're not doing great, we wanna make sure that our teachers are constantly letting our families know that that's happening. I talked as fast as I could to end that.
It was good, it was good. All right, thank you.
I'm gonna disconnect and Dan will.
Do you wanna move over here?
Chairs are really bad.
Down for Grandma. I'm not going to know what that means.
I was like, which one are we gonna go to? And then I realized probably none.
It should be our department team building time.
Oh, really? No, we don't know.
We haven't even made it to lunch yet.
We haven't, we said one of the first things we were gonna do is go to
Yeah.
lunch, hasn't happened yet, so. This was happy. All right, Dan, it's all yours.
Awesome. So some of the things will actually kind of parallel to North. So I'm gonna start with our ACT. This is junior ACT scores, the mean score. We've seen kind of a downward trend for the last 4 years and expecting that again this year too. We don't have those scores ready to push out yet, unfortunately, but when we do, we'll be able to share that. The deltas within math, we see that algebra strand like I was talking about before, and it's significantly lower than the other ones. And then a real strength of ours was stats and probability, so we're doing things right there. Our algebra strand needs that help, and that kind of shows with, and I think with the 8th grade realignment, it'll be stronger. And there's some other pieces that I'll talk about a little bit later too, but like our reading and ELA strands were all very close. Our delta for science was interpretation of data, which I thought was interesting because our stats and probability strand in math were strong. And our scientific observation strand was strong for ACT. So like knowing those things, we get our strand scores, we really don't, it's hard for us to dive into those strand scores to see what that actually means. So I've got down below pre-ACT cohort data. Next year, we're gonna implement a pre-test pre-ACT. The pre-ACT is what our freshmen and sophomores do in April-ish. and that's the state testing. But we're gonna actually do another one prior to that, and that one allows us, they give us that information back so we can see an item analysis. What did kids get wrong? What percent of the questions did kids get wrong? So we can really start honing down into what are those skills that we're seeing that are missing from our students at that point. Without that, it's not impossible, it's a little more difficult to really be able to dive deep into, where are our mishaps coming on that ACT test. And then we're gonna have cohort data, freshman, sophomore, to junior year to see where that growth is actually going. So we're really excited for that piece. I think it's gonna allow us to make some better decisions moving forward. The next piece I'll talk about, our predictive measures, is our grades. That is as of 5/15 up there. It shows in green A's through B minus. The yellows go from C pluses down to D minus, and then the reds are our failures. Those failure percentages will shrink. There's 3 weeks left in the school year. Typically, some of the kids are starting to get some of those works put in.
Last minute.
Yeah. Looking at semester one, I don't have semester one up here, but like the failure rates were right around 2 or 3% for each one, and that was very close to what they were in 2021. So our semester one grades were better than what they were in 2021. So we're seeing an increase in student grades. Algebra 2, which is one of our predictive measures, students who are successful in Algebra 2, they are oftentimes viewed as ready for college math. We've got a 12% increase in students with B minus or better in second semester Algebra 2, so we're seeing some positive increases in that. Our sophomore class, most interestingly, has the lowest grades in the building. And I don't know if that's typical for a high school. I would think it would be freshmen, sophomores would get better. Our juniors and seniors are strong, our seniors are very strong, so I think as they get more mature, they do a little bit better. But it is, it's an interesting piece, and Jeff will even talk about a little bit more, like our behavioral data and the grades totally correlate with each other.
So just curious on a sophomore class, knowing the sophomore class was in 8th grade during COVID, do you think that's a lot of that issue? I think so. I think, they missed a lot of the one-on-one attention that they could have gotten in the classroom.
Interesting question, and maybe, but I also think there's some structural things where, freshmen don't, they've got a lot of attention on freshman year, a lot of plans for juniors and seniors, especially if you've got alternative pathways outside of the high school, if they're struggling. It seems like sophomore year is the one where we have the least number of interventions.
Is this a trend every year that you see with sophomore?
I'm wondering if we can dig and find some of that. I don't know.
Is that where the, avid rise become a benefit for the school?
Those are two different interventions, that could be a possibility, but we're gonna talk a little bit more about our interventions too, just in general, because that was an area of just a huge focus this year, so. But student disabilities, they do lag in our core areas too. I know we've made a shift in how we deliver special instruction, where we've created a classroom where our students with special needs are able to go to and get more specialized instruction in that environment too. So there's pieces that we're putting into place that should start to address some of those pieces. The sophomore class though is the one that we are, I think, most concerned about right now too, and how do we support them when they're going into their junior year next year too.
So there's been a marked improvement in our practices at the high school related to attendance. So this what I did was split attendance and behavior over 2 slides just to give a little bit of detail on like what we're doing differently this year. So the team sat down and we got feedback from teachers over the summer, and one of the things that they really wanted us to focus on was hallway traffic, truancies, and how we do our enforcement. So that's been a major focus of ours. So first 10 minutes of every hour, we've got a hall sweep that goes through and makes sure kids are in class. We've got a 2-minute warning bell and that 7-minute passing period that gives kids an indicator when they should start moving to class and getting in the classroom. And then we've ensured teachers are out in the hallways in those passing times and making sure that they're getting kids ushered in the classrooms. We're also linking accumulations of tardies and truancies to detentions, and then historically we've struggled with obligating students to serve their detentions. What's the motivator for them to serve detentions? So we've linked those to participation in after school events like attending after school sporting events, attending dances.
A student did not go to prom last week because they had outstanding detentions.
Correct, or they would be unable to buy, dance tickets until they do that.
What do you do with students who, have intentions that don't really participate in any of that after school sports and they really don't care?
Yeah, so.
You know what I mean, that's
yeah,
not an
they're-
incentive for them.
Exactly, and so that's always gonna be a conversation, and those are multiple conversations with home. And it's also, for example, just like walking them into lunch detentions until they serve them. And just making sure that they're in lunch detentions and, are serving it at school if they're not coming after school. And we do have a wide number, a certain number of kids who are uninterested in certain detentions. They're kind of disconnected from the school community, but we see that as an area for growth too. I mean, why aren't the kids connected to school? Why are they so dispassionate about, being members of this, school community and getting involved, and so that's an area for growth.
How's your parent support? I'm sure you notify parents that they're.
Well, and it just puts parents on notice that, we can't, we've gotta follow up on all the tardies, we've gotta follow up on all the truancies, and just like getting our practices, with the parents in, you've gotta call your student out if they're out and be consistent with, with times and that kind of thing, so.
Good.
Because parents have to be held accountable too.
Well, yeah.
I just think that's an important factor.
Yeah.
And I hope that parents care enough to.
The vast majority absolutely do, yes.
Absolutely, yeah. We've had good success, and in fact, this is a welcome, I'm having trouble getting my kid out the door in the morning for that first hour class. Well, knowing that you've got a detention for accumulation of tardies or something is a motivator that parents appreciate as a help to get the kid out the door. Because a lot of parents are struggling with kids at home who, will not want to come to school, and as you guys know, it's hard to move a high schooler who doesn't want to be here. So hallway traffic, and this is just a no-brainer. We used to have a passport system where kids had their planners and they would sign out, they get 5 passes a week. So the problem with that was, it was a great idea in theory, in practice it just fell apart. No one had their planners, so this year we had Brett Warner down in Tech Ed. When the 3D printers make us some color-coded hall passes, problem solved. One for each level. Okay, your red level, you shouldn't be up in the blue area. So that was just an easy fix. And then in our monthly attendance meetings, we really dig into the kids who are struggling and try to figure out. We have 10 to 20 truancy meetings a month. We send out a wide number of form letters, indicating what our interventions are and how we can help out at the school level. And then we're also having teacher huddles around students. So if we're seeing a student who is particularly struggling with attendance or otherwise, we'll sit as a group of all the teachers and say, all right, what are we seeing as strengths? What are we seeing as areas, problem points? And then what's an action step in the next 2 weeks that we can do to help this kid catch up in class to get to school? And then we'll communicate that home, identify what the plan is, and then check in a couple weeks later and see how things are going. So all of those things have been helpful. And I'll continue on the behavior front. So some of the positives, the Falls Pride Committee hosts a monthly excellence breakfast in which students can be invited based on positive behaviors, and that's been a great success. In the watermarked image, you can see a table of kids and we've got community partners there, and that's been great as well. We've started work on anti-bully, with an anti-bully task force involving parent feedback, student, staff, and we've got a reporting tool that is right now Google Form, and we're piloting it right now and seeing if kids are struggling and they feel like they don't have a voice or an avenue to get those out, what's the tool they can use to get it to our attention. So today, something popped up, pulled the student in, what's going on, we talked about it, we talked to the other student, we called home, and we feel like we're getting some quicker resolutions.
So I wanna ask about the anti-bullying, the Google form, so where do you draw the line in regards to having that anonymous form versus, I guess privacy, respecting privacy of a student, calling somebody out, there's all the legal logistics of that. You know what I mean?
Yes, do you wanna specifically know, is it anonymous or not anonymous?
Yeah, like how are you devising that form where I guess you have to be careful in regards to that form, calling out students or,
As it is now, it's anonymous, and we're piloting it. We looked at a number of resources that are already made through, the state of Wisconsin and others that could be purchased third party, and area districts, what they're using. And so we're looking at one. We encourage the reporter to give the name, but we don't require it. And obviously, we've got looking at the report that's coming in, we've got to determine, does this seem to be credible, and based on the amount of evidence that they provide. So if we say like, where did it happen, when did it happen, who else was involved, who else might be able to speak on this. And sometimes it can be easily corroborated. And in other cases, it's just like, Mr. Halbernich is giving me a hard time, he's making me feel dumb. Well, okay, so I don't have a name, I'll just talk to Mr. Halbernich and say like, hey, I just came across, is this resonate or anything? That, just a simple conversation. And we've also in this, and this is where I didn't know if you're going, but we're eliminating anything that could be seen as crisis related. So if it is an emergency, the first question is this an emergency? Is this suicide, or is this like a threat to the building? If so, it's directs them to two numbers that they call.
Okay.
Here's the Huntington Falls Police Department, here's a suicide prevention line, because we can't be, we cannot be responsive enough to those type of issues. So this is purely like garden variety, student issues. We're not getting into crisis management with this or suicide prevention.
So I think we are very deliberate on that.
And again, the huddles have produced, some good outcomes as far as like helping kids see that we're surrounding them with support, helping the parents see that we're a team in this. So as far as some of the deltas, we are adopting majors and minors this year, and I don't know if this is a delta, like an area for growth, but it's an area where we're gonna see, are we doing better or worse in the 23-24 school year? So majors and minors, it looks like a big number. We're getting good at like learning how to report these and making sure we're consistent in our practices. Kathy Sanders in the main office is doing a great job going through all the logs and saying, okay, is this major, minor, is this major number 4, minor number whatever. Suspensions seem kind of in line with how we have been. There hasn't been a big change from years past, but we're trying to be very clear with that code of conduct and what would constitute an out-of-school suspension and school suspension, and we'll continue to refine that over the summer now that we've gotten a year working with majors and minors. And again, 10th graders, we've had the most behavioral hurdles, so it is one of those things we're saying, okay, what is it about sophomore year that we can do, and to reduce the number of referrals and encourage academic growth, which we're seeing, that they need.
So just curious, I know we're pointing out 10th grade again, how were this group of kids last year's freshmen? Or did you have the same?
It's hard to
Most
say
referrals?
because we didn't use
We didn't
the same
track it?
system.
Okay.
Yep.
I'm assuming this is something you'll track going forward, as you can see if there's a pattern or something.
Yeah. We'll be able to see that next year at least, but
Sure.
I'm hoping that there's gonna be a drop off for junior year too, so, but it's something that we'll be able to monitor right away since we know it's a problem.
And sometimes, like, as we're looking at data, I mean, sometimes there is a class where there's a smaller number of kids, but who are really struggling and,
Sure.
you know, it's cyclical sometimes. But if it is systemic, we wanna be able to figure out what can we do, so we're gonna have to dig a little bit deeper.
And I didn't mention this at first, Brian Highmark is at a athletic event tonight, and then Christina Taylor, the other associate principal, her father passed away yesterday
no.
suddenly, so she would have been here and she's been instrumental in all of these things, just so you
The
wanna.
bullying.
Yes, yeah, she spearheaded that and yeah, so
She's a warrior on the detention center.
she's awesome, yeah. I said both her and Jeff have really taken that role this year and teamed it together and have done phenomenal things in the building.
Sure.
Our hallways are calm, we've toured teachers who are prospectively coming to our district to work and they have commented on that, like, wow, there's nobody in the hallway, so
Well
we're
done.
happy to say that.
That takes, takes a
I
team.
saw that the first meeting that you and Christina had with the division chairs at the beginning of the year. You did a really nice job of setting that standard for moving forward.
Yeah, thanks, no, it's been good.
And I'll go through this quickly, lots of great things, but just to look at our athletes, our numbers are back to pre-pandemic numbers, which is great. That's the hope.
Yeah.
We have 38 clubs that we offer, our FBLA state champs again, and our spring sports right now, if you have the opportunity, holy cow.
Baseball team,
Yeah.
rocking it.
Baseball, girls softball,
Yeah.
they're looking, I believe, at a number 1 seed. Track and field is so strong, and then our number 1 boys singles player is tough.
Nice.
So girls soccer is also having a great season too. But very exciting, just a great time to be, so our fall and our winter wasn't as great as we'd like to see
Yeah.
it, but we're ending the
Making
year
up for it.
strong, so, and we're excited for next year too, so.
Awesome.
Our areas of focus for 22-23, this year was our PLCs, our data analysis and adjustment to instruction. So, okay, we're meeting together, so what are we doing when we meet together? We're looking at student work and then we're adjusting our instruction for that work. And then Phoenix Time plays a huge role in that piece too. So now we know what our students don't know, we can pull them into Phoenix Time and instruct them. There was a lot of hope at the beginning of the year that students were gonna self-select their Phoenix Time as appropriate, and a lot of them do, but we know that not all of them do, and we're able to pull students in. We've seen a big increase of teachers pulling kids in, which is exciting. So Phoenix Time next year will also be another focus. How can we continue to use that piece? We talked, I know, about the anti-bullying task force, and then the intervention alignment. The handbook that we have there, we've taken all of the supports in the building, and there are a ton of supports in the building. But this year, we've looked at them all, categorized them all, and figured out like when are they appropriate for a student? When are they appropriate for a student to be taken out of them eventually too? So that's the handbook that we've created. We're gonna create a data tracking system for those students to see now next year if we put a student in a reading intervention or a math intervention, is it working? And then if it's working great, what are our exit criteria, and if it's not, what's the next step after that too? I know Chelsea Crane and Adam Jensen were both instrumental in that piece this year. And then finally, Avid, Rise, and Quest. And I'll let Jeff talk a little bit about Avid, but Rise, this year we did not have positive results from it. It was not strong. Our instructor for Rise has chosen to actually leave at the end of the year. So we're reconfiguring that piece for next year. How do we support those students? We do truly believe that we can support those students better in their classes, supporting them in that piece. I know our RISE educational assistant, who is phenomenal, is gonna run a supported study hall. So we're gonna still identify those students, we're gonna provide them that study hall, but we're gonna give her a real framework as to how to run that piece. And then we're gonna monitor those students within that intervention type data dashboard that we wanna create. So to ensure that they are staying on track. Our Quest is a strong program. It's really for our juniors and seniors. We really, I think with our handbook and our interventions, we're gonna be at least showing that we've tried X, Y, and Z before a student goes to Quest. And Quest is an excellent option for students, for some students in the building, but it really is that last step. We do wanna keep them in as long as we can. Sure. And I'll talk about what happened.
Well, this is just kind of like our tiers, right? So tier 1, we see Avid as being affecting the whole school. And so those executive functioning skills that kids come in freshman year, they need to learn organization, they need to learn time management, they need to learn test prep, note taking, all those kind of things. And that is, there's big Avid and then there's some electives. And so we want to make sure that that's really, really solid because that affects all kids. RISE we were seeing as a tier 2 intervention type. It was only affecting a small number of kids and our results weren't good. So we're gonna monitor how this goes with this guided study hall with Avid and see if we're getting better results with those kids who are in the at-risk category, potential for Quest later on, but see if we can avoid that. And then Quest of course is one of our junior senior options that allows kids out of the building if the building doesn't work.
How many students are in RISE or this year?
Up to 20. Yeah, it's usually not that at a time, but there might be little surges before the end of terms.
And it's just like a half a morning program, right?
Or afternoon.
Oh, it is
There's a morning and there's an
okay.
It's usually one person doing the Avid and RISE.
Yeah, we've done
So I
that.
wonder if that was why, 'cause I think it's just a lot,
Too much.
that's a lot.
We blew it up, so we are having
For one person.
classroom teachers, so like one of our English language arts teacher is gonna take an Avid section next year. Which is gonna be great because they're gonna take what they learn in Avid and they're gonna actually apply it to their classes too. So we're trying to build that, take away what you were gonna talk about, so we're at next steps, so. But yeah, the Avid piece, we're distributing to different staff members in the building, so they might, we've got our reading interventionist is gonna take another Avid section. And then we're looking for our last Avid teacher still right now, so.
Yeah, that's a really good plan.
I've seen Avid have some really great impact when you're implementing those strategies across the building with your teachers. Because they have, just really can strengthen core instruction with just different strategies that they advocate for. And so having more people with that knowledge, I think is gonna help the high school for those strategies to permeate all classes, so I'm really excited about that shift, because I've seen that be successful in other places, so.
Dan was indicating that I would talk about it as if I know. I don't know. I'm getting trained in Avid. Like this spring, I'm gonna do 2 summer institutes, one for director, one for and so like I'll be getting like the broad understanding of it, but we're also taking a group to Minneapolis for the summer institute, and Dan can attest, and you probably know, it's a very high quality professional development that has a big impact potentially.
Best I've ever been.
So the classroom's gonna absorb the RISE students back again?
Mhm.
Is that the ultimate goal?
And we've had a few students who have exited RISE and they've actually had better results in the classroom.
In the classroom.
And that says, if we're not getting the results, the
always have
intended
Quest.
purpose of RISE and how we had originally envisioned it, we couldn't sustain it, and the stripped down version wasn't working, so.
So you heard Jeff say he's taking the director of professional development, so they Avid requires that every district have a director, and I think in the past it's been my position. And so Jeff's agreed to take that piece on, so we can have another trained person in the building and kind of advocate for, or just use our financial resources more, use our financial resources more effectively. So not training me who's not in the building. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Jeff has really stepped up to take that piece. I'm excited. I think it's a great match for his skill set too, so.
Awesome, I'm excited.
Thank you.
I know we talked about pre-ACT, so the progress monitoring piece, and then continue with the Phoenix time, and the last piece I'll just add is, so lacrosse, will be coming to the school, we'll co-op with Hamilton on that. And then boys volleyball, we'll have freshman, JV, and a varsity team, and then, girls wrestling.
Yeah.
So exciting, lots of things, it's gonna be a busy summer.
Good.
Which will be good, which will be good, so.
How's that for them?
Pretty good.
Alright, pretty good.
Oh, well.
No, that's okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Leah
good.
poked her
Thank you
head
so
in
much.
once and, walked away, so
Yeah.
she knew the next meeting was gonna start.
She got the hint.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that was really
Thank you
good.
very much.
All right, next item, curriculum and learning committee calendar.
Yes.
You have something to,
Yes.
and we'll
the
get your,
calendars there.
we'll get their slideshow
Yes,
added,
we will
okay.
update that. We didn't wanna do it
That'd be
before the
great.
meeting, but
Yeah,
we wanted to add it after you've seen it. So
okay, great.
for June, we have a grade K through 2 academic update. That'll be the last of the schools to present.
Mhm.
We have an early literacy update. We have a lot happening in that area, so we wanna make sure we update you on that. We should have a decision on our elementary science curriculum adoption for approval. We are rapidly finishing that up this month. We typically in June, and plan to this year, have a post-secondary credit opportunities update. So transcripted credit, start college now, early college credit, and dual enrollment information. And then typically, and then by policy, we have an annual bullying report. So the trick will be, now that school is out, or school is soon to be out, to get all of our calendars to mesh. But
Yes.
I'll look for some dates that these key people are available and then
Okay.
check your availability.
Oh, okay,
So,
sure,
I wanna make sure you're there, but I also,
yeah,
if the right
yeah,
people aren't in place, it's not a good use of our time, so.
okay, so we'll wait to set the
Yeah,
meeting.
I think, given how much we get your policy meeting started too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
Did you wanna consider like a consistent meeting day
day,
every month? I work better on structure versus
Yeah.
just every time we have to whip out a calendar.
maybe after June, we can
Yes,
pin
I
it
think
down.
after,
Yeah.
I totally
Okay.
agree, and I think
Yeah.
that would,
My brain
that would
works
help
better
us.
that way
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
of the
Thursday,
ways-
yeah, we can talk, we can
Yeah,
pin it
so
down,
we
but you
can
think it'd
pin
be best to pin it down after?
Or at the end of the next meeting or something
Yeah.
like that, so.
I
Just I like it
know,
like consistent, I know every Wednesday at whatever is
and I
this,
know
you know, third
communications
week.
did take a 4 PM slot, I think it's like every third Thursday.
Okay, so we usually met,
Shelley jumped on that one.
we usually met the last
Yeah.
week of the month.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and Wednesday I know works better for Laura's family.
Yeah.
Especially the later in the evening we get,
Okay.
but, we wanna make sure it works for, everybody in
It's
that.
for
Yeah,
Thursday for
Wednes-
me, I can be,
Wednesdays
Anytime.
are tough
anytime,
for me.
Me too.
that makes it nicer
that
because we
fits
can
into
start earlier.
I can be
After
Thursdays.
So I'm just,
Yeah, so we could,
throwing
you
it
know,
out there.
summer
we'll
schedule versus.
We'll try to hammer it
Yeah,
out
so we'll-
after the
yeah.
June, because the June date will be the odd date
Yeah.
because of school and time.
Correct, so that would be
Okay.
great, and then my goal is also at June to bring a draft of the calendar for next year.
Okay, yeah,
Like
that's
the
right.
things that we usually do,
So we're gonna talk about draft of the upcoming year for
so I'll
the
have
next meeting too,
a draft of what we historically have done, and then
and possible agenda.
possible agenda items, I won't forget, I promise, and also some things that I think, I'm wondering if there aren't some things that we do every year just because we do them every year.
Yeah,
And I'm wondering if we can streamline a little bit, like when
Okay.
we are looking for a particular piece of information or something,
yeah,
just to make our meetings more efficient.
Okay.
But that's
well,
up to you to decide, it was just a thought, sometimes
talk about that
we
next time.
just have some routines that.
I'd like to do my homework.
Yeah, and the policy, curriculum, and learning, back to back, no,
Yeah,
not
yeah, so
good.
I'm not sure ultimately, we didn't do
Double.
too badly, so,
Yeah. Okay, so we'll defer to
So-
set a date,
Yeah, that's fine.
okay, and we'll do it like per email and stuff, invite or whatever.
But Thursdays work for her.
Thursdays, yeah.
It's like
Yeah, so
we can do
we
it
can maybe
even
hone in
earlier
on-
in the day,
Yeah.
just so you know.
Would that work?
yeah. Typically, my calendar makes it hard,
Yeah.
but we can try and figure this out, but
Her
then-
calendar's rough. How about Friday mornings?
Friday at 5,
Oh, well, depends, not here.
No, I know.
Okay,
So
so,
we'll keep working on that.
you know, Tuesdays can be a possibility, but I don't know, whatever, we'll have to pin it down.
Yeah, we'll have
Week
to
is rough for me.
just get that, yeah, I think maybe seeing things in email format too and lining it up can be easy.
We can perhaps do it like a doodle poll.
Yeah, that
And
works,
check
that works the most efficiently.
Okay, we will work on that
Okay.
the next week.
So I need, and then we're ready to adjourn,
Yes.
correct?
Actually,
Okay.
I just have one more
Okay, sure.
question. So is it normal to get the meeting minutes? I know they have to be posted to the public 24 hours in
Mhm.
advance, but is there a way we can get them sooner? I feel like there was so much
Agenda?
information to go through today.
Yeah.
Agenda.
So in the agenda, so the agenda, the drafts should be visible to you
Yeah,
in Board Docs.
okay,
So
The draft,
as we
okay.
are getting the
okay.
information, we're uploading it, so you
under
should,
agenda?
under
or-
agenda drafts.
Oh, I'll have
It
to look
that
for
should
that.
be available to you,
Okay.
I can show you how to find that if that's
Okay.
helpful.
Yeah,
So
we
you
can
should
help
be able to see the things as we're drafting them
Okay.
before they're posted to the public.
Okay,
So that should
and then, I mean, it's just like reading through all the attachments and stuff, but, you know, to your defense though, you wanted to get those things through before the school, for the
correct.
summer.
And so we met a week
Yeah.
earlier than we had
Yeah,
originally
and-
planned, so it just,
Yeah.
and this time of year is just tough, so.
Yeah, and timing when the meeting was
Yeah,
and
and
everything was
just-
hard to
This
pin
is
down.
bullying her.
No, I know.
No, not
We're talking about bullying
Yeah,
next
but I was
time.
like, oh my gosh, we want this
Well,
all
since you were,
addressed
some of this
tomorrow?
has been discussed over time too,
No.
and you didn't have that advantage, so.
And I think though too, like, you know, we could, like if it's something like a big packet or something,
Yeah.
maybe get that well in advance, you know?
Yeah, and I
yeah.
think it would just, the other thing, that historically textbooks, typically textbooks that are just new editions have not even been brought to the
Right.
committee.
Yeah.
And it's like, I really wasn't comfortable with that,
Yeah,
so
Okay.
that created, some additional,
Okay.
like, I think that was, yeah, so, especially because things were ready, so.
okay, sorry.
All
Alright, so anyway, alright, so I need a motion to adjourn. First by Gina and second by board member Wren. Get it straight.
Thank you.
All in favor, say aye.
Thank you.
Aye. Okay, meeting's over.
Alright.
Do we turn that off?
Yeah, can you just-
Might as